we're going to discuss first what a structure is. Okay? Alright, so we're recording. So today we want to talk about the concept of a struct in C. Right, a struct in C. Right. You might also see this being, of course, referred to as like records or something. So, all right, and structs, well, they're short for structures, right? And what structs allow us to do is that they allow us to store multiple variables, right? They allow us to store multiple variables under one variable name. So you could think about it like a bit like an array, but the advantage that you have with this over an array is that the advantage that you have with this over an array is that it allows for multiple data types to be able to be stored at the same time, right? So it allows us to store, right, multiple, right, multiple values of different data types in the same variable. Okay, so what do I mean by this? I mean that, say for instance, I wanted to store information on a student. Okay, so if I wanted to store information on a student, right, what information would be important to store about a student? Anybody?
Name.
Right, so I want to store the student's name, right, and not just the name, but maybe the first name and the last name at the very least. What else I want to store about a student?
ID
Their
number.
their form class.
Right, the ID number and form class. Right, and maybe like their date of birth or something. So right, the date of birth, right, and um, even in terms of data birth, let me just for the purpose of being able to show different data types, right? Let me say birth underscore day, birth underscore month, and birth underscore year. So we have this information about a student. So if we think about a student, we could think about a student as an entire entity, right? Wouldn't it make sense to be able to think about a student as a single student, but to be able to access like this information about that student just by being able to reference that student. So like I'm thinking to myself, each one of you, right? Jasmine, Jaden, Chelsea, right? Elijah. All of you all have your first name, your last name. You all have different ID numbers, right? Some of you all might be in the same form class as others, but each one of you all are assigned to a form class. You have a birthday, a birth month, and a birth year. But all of you have the same thing in common. You're a student. So if I wanted to record this information about multiple students or even one student, let's start off with one student, it might be wise to have this information all together rather than as loose variables. You all understand where I'm coming from? So I could create a data type called student, and my structure student is going to contain this information, this first name, last name, ID number, form, class, birthday, birth month, and birth year. And all of this information is going to be of different data types, right? So your first name and last name and ID number and form class would be like strings. Sorry. Right? String, and string. And then the birthday, the birth month, and the birth year, these are going to be integer values. But I would like to say, for instance, if I wanted to create information to hold on one student, I would want to be able to do something like this. Student, right? STU, and what do I have now? I have a variable STU that can hold all of this information inside of here. So I have now the ability to say, okay, STU dot birth underscore day, right, is equal to 15, right? STU dot birth underscore month is equal to 12. STU dot birth underscore year is equal to 2004. So this student who has, been created and the variable for the student is named STU, I know that whoever the student is, their birth date is the 15th of the 12th, 2004, right? If I wanted to, I could get from the user, get stu dot fname, and I could get stu dot lname. And what this would allow me to do is now I could enter the first name and last name for the student, right? So I could enter Maria Smith. And now I have a variable that I could reference this one variable STU, and I could reference the element inside of this one variable, and I could access the data inside of that element. So STU holds information on Maria Smith, who was born on the 15th of the 12th, 2004. Everybody understand what we're getting at here with these structures?
Yes, sir.
Right? So we could use these structures to, hold information, right? Hold different types of information, but under the same variable umbrella. All right. Okay. So everybody good with this, right? Asking again. So, yes, Joshua?
So STU is a different variable in itself you created.
Yes. So STU is a variable and student is the data type. So I've created basically a data type that is made up of these elements here. So once I decide that I define my data type, right? So it comes like I'm creating a data type named student, and then STU is a variable of the data type student. All right. And let's take this exact example, and we're going to try it in in C. Okay, so start off, of course, like our regular, like every other regular program, include, right, stdio.h, include stdlib.h, then main, save this, and this will be struct_eg.c. Okay, so we have our struct example here, and we want to, what is the purpose of this program, right? It's a C program which uses a struct variable in order to store some basic information about a student. Okay, so we have some struct, we want to create this struct variable, and for us to be able to hold this information like we have here, we have to define that in C. So we have to basically declare our struct, define our struct, and then declare a variable of that type struct. So how do we do that? We use the keyword struct, and then we put the name of the variable here, student, and then we can put what makes up the student. So we identify that the student has a first name, a last name, an ID, and a form class, and then a date of birth, right? So we'd say char first name, right? Char first name,
Sir,
last name, yeah.
I'm
So it's
Hazard
a
said that he can't see your screen.
oh, hold on. Anybody else getting that issue? I'm gonna stop my share and attempt again. Hold on. Has the issue been resolved?
Not as yet. I just seen a blanks. Just seen black.
Okay. Anybody else getting that issue? Or?
I could always see it.
So it's there for me.
Okay. All right. Hazard, maybe it's a issue on your end. So hopefully it'll resolve. The internet will pick up. All right.
Yes, it come up now.
Okay. All right. Right. So we have the first name, last name. We have char form underscore class. Right. We have form class, which is again a string. Right. We have char ID number. Okay. Okay. Char ID number. We have int birth underscore day, int birth underscore month, and int birth underscore year.
So ID number wouldn't be int.
Yeah, ideally, ID number could be an integer, but in terms of when you have like IDs, ID numbers are not always integers because technically you don't do any mathematical operations on ID numbers, right? And then identification numbers could also have like characters in them sometimes. I know it's called an identification number, but you know, depending on how people represent it, you might say, you know, like it might have like a letter attached to it, etc. So because of the fact that even though it's a number, it's actually sometimes better to represent it as an integer, sorry, as a string, because of the fact that you're not using it for any mathematical purposes. And you might actually want to, you know, it's actually in terms of being able to sort and search, it might actually be able to be you might actually be able to do so better as a string. Okay, so this is where we declare our struct. Declaration of our struct. Alright, declaration of our struct, and these are the members that make up our struct. So now in order to sorry, not declaration, right? Definition of our struct. And when we want to declare a variable of our struct type, right, we will see you have to put back the word struct, S-T-R-U-C-T, struct, student, and then STU. So what do we have here? We have here, right, a declaration of a variable of type student. Okay, so student was our data type. Student was our data type. And what happened is that we declared a variable of type student. Everybody understand so far?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
All right. So just taking a 2-minute break. I have to reset my daughter on her class. Her tablet stuck, so she got kicked off her class. Just give me 2 minutes to resolve this. Thank you. Okay, I'm back. All right. Actually took less than 2 minutes. Right, so what we did so far was we defined our struct and we declared our struct. And now we could use this struct as any other variable. But remember that a struct itself, the struct variable, is only really like a gateway to a different variable, right? Which are the members that make up the struct, which are the places where the data is actually held. So, okay, if it is that I wanted to store information inside of this struct, right? If I wanted to store information inside of this struct, I could prompt the user, printf, right? Please enter the student's first name and last name, right? Or let me just put first name, right? So please enter the student's first name. I'm gonna get, what am I going to get? I'm going to get stu dot, right, dot first name. So we access the element, right, or the member, sorry, of the struct, access the member of the struct using a dot. All right, so we access the member of the struct using a dot, and this is the same for putting the value in and taking the value out, right? So again, I mean, I'm going to just be lazy and copy it and then change this to last name. And of course, I could just change this to L and we get student last name. Okay. Let's do the same for, please enter the student's date of birth separated by slash, right, forward slash. Okay, and in this case, because this is an integer, we will use scanf, and we would say scanf %d slash %d slash %d. And we have to put the ampersand in front of it, stu dot b underscore day, comma, b underscore month, comma, stu dot b underscore year, with of course the ampersand in front of it. So right. So we have this information inside of here, right? Percent sign D, percent sign D, student day, month, year. After scanf, we normally put a get char. And let's see if we could write this information to a file. Why not? Because we've already, you know, we still want to get some practice with files. So if we have to write this information to a file, right? Let me expand and write this information to a file. How am I going to go about doing this? What do I need to write information to a file? That's a question to my students, my wonderful students.
So, Apple phone?
What?
Apple phone?
Before the F open.
Before, okay.
Right, Hannah. Thanks, Hannah. We need the pointer. So we say file, file pointer, and then Ryan, we do the F open, right? So we say FP is equal to F open, right? And well, of course, I typically put my files in C colon backslash backslash Valdez underscore C backslash student underscore info dot txt. What do we want to do to this file? We want to write this information to this file, so I'm opening this file in write mode W. All right, so open a file in write mode, and what is the next step? The next step will of course be to print the data to the file. All right, print the data to the file. So if we want to print the data to the file, we have to go fprintf fp, comma, what are we putting in the file? We're putting in the first name, the last name, and the date of birth information. So we could say %s, comma, %s, comma, %d, comma, %d, comma, %d. And so we write in this information to the file. And we have to write stu dot f underscore name Alright, so stu dot f underscore name, comma, stu dot, not stud, stud, dot l underscore name, comma, stu dot birthday, comma, stu dot stu dot. So we're writing the data that we just entered to a file. And last thing that we have to do is to remember to close our file pointer, close the file pointer, and hopefully we get our information written to a file. Alright, so C, wow, my drive running out of space, boy. Alright, Valdez underscore C. So we do not have any file inside of here named studentinfo.txt. But when we run this, I have a misspelling here. students, students, and students, right? So that's the problem with copy and pasting. If you have an error, you copy and paste that error everywhere. Right? So the first name, right? Let's go with AIDAN, right? HAYES, right? So let's put in a fictional date of birth for Eden. Eden, what year you was born in?
2004.
2004. Alright, so let's see if it was written to the file, because this program does nothing else but take that and, okay, so C Valdez underscore C. Alright, no, it was not written to the file. So we have a problem. Oh, look, it come up here. Alright, and look the information inside here. Yes, it was written to the file. Okay. So anybody could see where we kind of heading with this information with structs. Structs are very useful because it gives us a way of managing data very easily. Instead of having to manage multiple variables of different data types, we have a way to put related data in a way that that all of the data is under one overarching variable name. So it allows us to manage this data very well. Okay. Any questions about the structs that we've seen so far?
It seems clear enough so far, sir.
All right, good. All right. So the beautiful thing and where I would like for us to be able to go with this, where I'd like for us to be able to go with this is I'd like for us to be able to take the structs and essentially, you remember last class how I explained that we want to read data from a file into the computer. We want to manipulate that data and then write it back to a file. That's what structs would allow us to do. Because what I want for us to do is to be able to create an array of structs, right? Because what if we had more than one student that we wanted to manage in this scenario? Well, instead of creating a single student variable, we'll create a struct array, right? We'll create a struct array, and the struct array would allow us to store multiple student names. So what we can do with that information is then that we can just write that information, all of the information stored in that struct array to a file. Understood? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So that's what we're looking towards, moving towards, right? I mean, structs are pretty easy, and as it is thus far, we as it is thus far, we really and truly have a lot of we have everything now that we need to write our SBA. The only thing that we don't have is enough practice to be able to get that. And that's what we're starting to work towards now, right? So we have these videos that we could reference. We, going forward, of course, in terms of being able to build the SPE program and stuff like that, I will also record that so that we'll have that to reference as well. But what I want for us is I want for us as students to, practice these things. I'm stressing on practicing, okay? And I'm not even asking you all to practice anything different. Just, take the same objectives, say like that we'll have at the top here, and you try to create this yourself and see how far you can go, and then reference maybe the video, reference whatever resource that you have that might be able to help you through. And by doing that, you will be able to build your programming skill. Okay. I know it's a bit early, but I want to ask for just like for us to take a 15-minute break. And then after, what I will do is I will fill a file, right? So we coming back, let's come back at just after 9:55 actually. So we just taken over a 10-minute break. What we would do is that we will fill a file with information and we will read that information with multiple lines of that information from a file into a struct array, right? So when we come back from the break, we will be reading information from a file into a struct array, and we will display that information from the file that we've placed into the struct array on the screen. And then going forward, maybe we can start to manipulate this information, etc. Any questions before we decide to go on, before we go on break?
Nah, sir. Everything
Yes,
straightforward so
sir.
far.
All right, then. All right, no problem.
Can scroll down for a second, please, before you.
Yeah, I could send this file to you all immediately.
Oh, yes.
So I'll send this in the chat. So if you want to take a look at it over your break, over the break, you could take a look at it. And then when we come back from the break, we would look at reading information into a struct. Okay. So slow 6. Oh no. No. All right. Okay, so I'll send this and then I'm going to pause the recording and we will start back in 10 minutes or so.